Hey guys, Sullivan Owen here in Philadelphia. So it's been a few weeks, but things are definitely waking up here. We did have a ton of rain the last few days. Things are a little bit like soggy, but I've made a lot of good progress on all the many tasks that I've been juggling. To start, I got the anemones planted that I had pre-sprouted back in February, early February. They went through, I hardened them off, but they went through some transplant shock. As soon as they got out, they will start pushing flowers though soon. And I have moved the ranunculus that we potted up in the greenhouse video. I've moved them outside, so they're growing on outside. They're still in their 2-inch pots. And today I took them out of, I was keeping them in a solid tray, so that I could keep watering them because it is getting hot out here in the greenhouse, and that had the labels on them. So now I have 4 trays of ranunculus, which I don't know which are which, because like many plants, before they flower, everything looks the same. So I guess I'll just have to plant them out. So I ended up starting another round of anemones and ranunculus, new varieties that I had received in the fall that I just hadn't gotten around to planting out with the bulbs. I decided not to pre-sprout them just because it's getting up into the high 70s, low 80s in the greenhouse during the day. So I potted them up dry. Definitely is a lot easier when they're dry. They fit more easily in the 2-inch pot, and left them outside to get soaked by the rain. And then I brought them in here, and they definitely puffed up, swelled up like they do when you're pre-sprouting them. So, I think people pre-sprout just to get things going before they take them out to like a high tunnel. But I think if you're doing them like me, which is just maybe greenhouse until you can get them out in the ground or out into a pot, I don't know if pre-sprouting is a necessary step. In greenhouse progress, the countertop was templated at the beginning of this past week, and it should get installed in the next week or so. I have a sink and a faucet all ready to go for whenever that happens. It definitely is getting hot in the greenhouse during the day. It's probably hard to tell because I need to clean fingerprints. There was 2 acrylic panels to act as like storm windows for the louvers. I took those off this week, and I have been opening both the cross ventilation windows and opening the sliders to start ventilating things. I have to figure something out for the hinge door side. They blow around and I can't have them slamming into the glass or anything like that. So I'll have to think about what I can use as like not just a door stop, but something that holds the door stable so that I can open everything up. But I'm not particularly concerned about keeping things warm in here at night. So it's more about making sure things don't dry out too fast and get too hot during the day. I felt like a little remiss in my seed starting, but Gardener's World, if you're not watching it, you totally should. You can get BritBox here in the States to watch Gardener's World and all of the other gardening related specials that are, the other hosts besides Monty. But I love watching Gardener's World, and I don't often do any grow along, but I saw that Monty was starting sweet peas just on last week's episode, and I thought I was really too late for my sweet peas, so I decided to give it a try, and I potted them up just kind of like he did. I took 5-inch pots, and I put generous amounts of seed in them because almost all my sweet pea seeds are very old, and germination can be tough. And I'll just keep them watered, and I'll keep them out here in the greenhouse, and hopefully we'll see some signs of life in another week or so. I guess my favorite thing about, well, most people who are into gardening find Gardener's World just like a joy to watch, but I think the thing that I take away from it is that Monty John has had his gardens for a very long time, and he's still continually doing things. So that tells me that you know, not to beat myself up when I feel like I'm constantly reworking things, because they're always going to be a work in progress. I guess sometimes I feel bad that I'm always moving plants around here. One of the big things that's changing around here is that when we originally started the renovations here, Tim is my husband, if you're new here. He lives here with me and our cats. And he was very interested for a time in having a good balance of lawn to flower borders. But since the potager renovation and having the table and chairs in the center of the raised bed garden, he's more interested in building up the border depth for privacy, for layering. If you haven't seen, my outside of the fence gardens are really densely planted, and shrubs and trees are starting to finally come into their own after 2 or 3 years in the ground. But I have a lot of stuff going on always in the spring, and the lawn is not something that I can manage. So we did contract with a local family company that does greenskeeping, and they're gonna come and put down corn gluten meal to prevent weed germination. They'll do some seed treatment, they'll do some fertilizing, and that should all start soon. So with Tim's interest in expanding the borders, it was really important that I get the new lines drawn, because we obviously don't want to put grass seed and things down in places where there's going to be eventually beds. But I have a big wedding in the second week of May, and so it's not possible for me to manage every single thing that needs to get done around here by myself. And I have a couple guys that help me with big tree planting, and they do my mulch for me, and they'll do some cleanup, they'll cut down the grasses and stuff for me, because I can't do it all. And I'm hoping that this is gonna work, but I took the drone out. I ended up getting a new drone this year. My big obstacle to my old drone was that I used to have to use my phone as the monitor, and now the new ones come with remote controls a lot of times that have screens in them. So it definitely makes a project like drawing new flower bed borders easier, because I was able to just leave the drone up and watch the monitor. So I think we're in agreement about one side of the border's new lines, and how it will kind of flow into the raised bed garden. We're still debating the beds next to the house. I would prefer to try to keep them more symmetrical, but Tim felt that they were way too deep. So I'm really happy with the expanded border space, but it brings me back to what I was talking about. I feel like I'm always moving my poor plants. So one of the reasons that I've been thinking a lot about this is because I was really happy with how my plant combinations were working last year. In exciting things, I really made it a goal this winter to make sure that any plants that I was ordering were going to come in now, end of March to the first week of April, so that I would have time to get them planted and let them grow while I'm working on my wedding stuff. And the way I did that this year was to buy, I bought almost everything that I could bare root. Bare roots are becoming a lot easier to find. It seems like all the plant resale websites have versions of them. They come in bags of 3, 6. This is, for me, a really economical way to get a lot of plants. Sometimes the roots that you get are big enough that you can even divide them the first season. And most of that I'm just planting out. There were a few things that came in really tiny that I felt like needed a week or 2 to grow in the greenhouse before I could put them out in the landscape. The one thing that I'm trying to be better about this year is putting labels with every bare root I plant, because one year I planted a bunch of bare root astilbe, and then I went and planted something else right on top of it, and they grew up, and it was a little bit of a mess. So I'm trying to be better, at least when I'm putting things, because most of these you're burying under the soil. So for me, it's a great way to get quantity, because I'm always filling up these big spaces. So this is an updated planting plan of the 3 kind of color stories that go along my fence. This is the first border that we've agreed on expanding. I probably won't plant anything at the new front of the border unless I get the cardboard and mulch done and let it settle for a few weeks, so for the most part, these things are just gonna get planted fairly close together so that they can grow, and then I'll have to shuffle things around. I have a few videos from the past on everything from how I put a flower bed together to some of the sketching that I do to my spreadsheet that I keep track of all my orders. And also, I have plant lists. I think I crossed into the 70s or 80s in terms of peonies, and I think the roses are well over 100, and I'm reluctant to even say on camera how many bearded iris they are, because they're the one plant that my husband really doesn't like, and I think I'm up to like 300. So there's a lot to look forward to. I haven't made any floral designs yet this year. I really wanted the first one of the season to be made out here in the greenhouse, but without the counter. That's challenging. And I don't want to move all the plant trays so that I can use the bench. So I'm hoping that will be in the next week or so, because the hellebore, just some early bulbs, things like that, everything is waking up now that we've started to have more consistently warmer weather. Even with the rain, it seems to have really, we're kind of turning that page to spring. One of the things about the greenhouse that I definitely didn't anticipate in the fall when I started building it is that it has kind of become a black and white homage to my grandmother, Joan. I went to see her in October, right before the greenhouse was delivered. I went and it came like the next week. And my grandmother she turned 97 in November. And she was so excited about the greenhouse. I mean, she has loved seeing everything that I've done. I think I've mentioned a few times, but if you're new here, I grew up in rentals and in cities. So I've never really had a garden before. My previous house with my husband was already landscaped. So I didn't own a shovel until like 2018 when I was living here and decided that I know just enough about flowers to be dangerous at a garden center. But so I went to see my grandmother in October, and then the greenhouse showed up, and I had shown her pictures. And she lives with my uncle and his wife, and I was able to text progress photos and things like that. And she was very excited to see how it was coming along. And I guess the thing I most associate with my grandmother is that it changed a bit when she got into her like 70s, but she pretty much only wore black and white my whole life. And she had bright red hair. And so I kind of always associate black and white with her. And I always think of it, she loves anemones. It's basically like her flower. I know how much my grandmother loved watching the videos and seeing photos of my garden develop. She was also really, really proud of me for trying ceramics and all of the things that I was able to do during the shutdown and things like that. So, she actually passed away just a day or two before I went looking for the counters. And, I regret that she never got to see any of this in person, but she wasn't able to travel at her age. And I was able to share as many photos and videos and things as I could with her. At Thanksgiving, my niece gave her a video tour of the house. So my 7-year-old niece and her 97-year-old great-grandmother. But I really just feel her presence a lot here. I was thinking a lot about her, and I'm planning to try to keep the floor in here black and white. And yeah, I really kind of felt her with me when I was looking for counters, and I went for something that's probably a little more bold than I was envisioning, but I'll be able to explain it, I think, a little more fully when it's here and installed. And I don't want to show you the photo because, you know, counters look like nothing when they're leaning up in slab form. So I was gonna end this by saying that I'm gonna go work on container plantings in front of the greenhouse, but instead I ended up weeding for like 3 hours today and filming this later because even though it's too wet to really plant anything, it's the perfect soil consistency for pulling onion grass, which is my main spring nemesis. So I was able to start tackling that, and as you do, just start cleaning things up. It helps transform things. All right, guys, thank you so much. I'll see you soon.